community of ours has unique needs. As mayors with the responsibility of managing services and operations that largely impact the daily lives of our residents, we believe that we're best positioned to determine local policies that improve their lives and meet the needs of our respective communities. So we undoubtedly will be opposing legislation that would erode that local authority, and we hope to seek progress in other policy areas that will help our constituents meet their needs and improve their families' lives. In areas where bipartisan agreement can be reached on issues and actions that will enhance quality of life for all Texans, the big city mayors are ready to play a constructive role. Municipal governments are closest to the residents, working literally from the street level to provide basic services and nurture strong opportunities and economies and a high quality of life. Cities are the economic engine of the state, and we bring an important perspective. Property tax relief, economic development, public health and violence prevention, workforce and education, and broadband infrastructure are several of the key priority areas in which we believe bipartisan efforts can be fruitful. And the BCM mayors here, the big city mayors of Texas, represent the wide political spectrum, and we represent a third of our state. For example, we'd like to see robust investment for Texas broadband grants and that can help all communities in the state obtain internet access. With thousands of bills being filed, all who are interested in the legislative process will have more than enough to monitor and to address. So by announcing our priorities, we hope to have and establish a constructive framework for successful bipartisan collaboration this legislative session. The 10 mayors I'm joined by today represent residents from every corner of Texas from an array of political ideologies, because we believe the policies outlined in our agenda will strengthen our communities and improve the quality of life for all Texans. And so it gives me great pleasure to toss the floor over now to Fort Worth Mayor Maddie Parker.
Good morning to my colleagues and those online. Welcome to Fort Worth, Texas, broadcasting live, first day of the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo. So while session's going on, something much more fun is happening in Fort Worth, Texas. So just as a reminder, Fort Worth is the 13th largest city in our state. Much like many of my colleagues on this call, all of us have fast growing cities with a lot of need and growth in infrastructure. And so for us, I think that's our focus this next session. Mayor Ron already hit on a few really important issues. Broadband, of course. In Fort Worth, we have an estimated 60,000 residents that don't have access to internet in their homes. So the city of Fort Worth, in a parallel standpoint from all the work going on in the comptroller's office, has also launched a community-free Wi-Fi program in 5 different neighborhoods across our city to really answer the needs. It was very evident during COVID, especially for our students trying to operate from home in really tough circumstances. Second is workforce and education. I think maybe is a separate category that all of us, especially Mayor Nelson and I, are very passionate about, is quality early child education. We're really in a crisis across this country, what parents are facing. And for a variety of reasons, the Texas legislature can really assist us in thinking about what it looks like to support early child education, specifically a mixed delivery model, which, without getting too wonky with you this morning, is really a focus on partnering with our area ISDs with community-based childcare programs to make sure mom and dad have a place to send those children that's high quality, but also embraces these high quality community-based programs that are on a very thin margin to make it all work. As a reminder, when my daughter went to Texas Tech for her first semester in college, it was more expensive for me to have a 4-year-old in childcare. That's what's the reality facing Texas families right now. And third is really just focus on economic development opportunities. In Fort Worth, we're really flexible to understand what the legislature wants to do with some of our tax incentive programs. We understand things need to evolve. But importantly, we've been the #1 job creator as a state for a reason. We've had excellent partnerships in Fort Worth with the state of Texas and the Governor's Incentive Fund to really make those deals possible. We want to see those continue and also really look at new and inventive ways, especially in categories like film and television here in Fort Worth and Texas. This is an area where Texas can thrive. We're competing with states like Georgia, Louisiana, New Mexico, and of course, Texans want to win. We have major programs, thanks to Taylor Sheridan and the 101 Studios. The Bass Reeves Project is now filming in our city. Those are only possible with a robust film incentive program, and you'll see us advocating in the state. And lastly, I'll just say I'm excited to see some of my friends in Austin. That's where I started my career. I was a baby when Mayor Turner was Speaker Pro Tem, so just trying to learn from him, of course. But it's an awesome opportunity for us to use our voices and expertise alongside our experienced legislators to really tell the story what's important in our Texas cities. Mayor Ron, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank y'all for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Parker. And I'm going to hand it right over to City of Arlington Mayor Jim Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Norberg. And I just want to express my congratulations and condolences to Mayor Parker on TCU reaching the national championship.
Go Frogs.
Go Frogs. I think that was wonderful. We turned Arlington purple in support of TCU. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to happen, but congratulations nonetheless.
Thanks, Mayor.
I am so proud to be a part of Big City Mayors here in Texas. We have an organization here of nonpartisan, bipartisan collaboration that we strategize collectively to do what's best for our communities as a whole. And learning from these incredible mayors throughout our state is critically important for me here in Arlington. That's why we've signed on to these legislative agenda issues here in Arlington. There are three particular ones that I wanted to talk about specifically. First of all, local governance. All of us know what's going on in our communities. I can't begin to sit and talk about what's happening in Houston or Amarillo or San Antonio or Grand Prairie, the way that those respective mayors can address their community issues. And to be able to maintain local control is critically important, and we would oppose any legislation that tries to take that local control away from us. Education is critical as well. In Arlington, we created an education coalition that brought our public schools together with our private schools, together with our charter schools, together with our homeschooling association and preschool organizations to collaborate where we used to compete. And those type of things are critical, and it needs to happen statewide. The cradle to career workforce development is essential. And the last thing I want to address is the public health and violence prevention. You know, Arlington has one of the largest tourism areas in the entire country. We are second only to Orlando with that. And I sit in fear every single day waiting for the next shoe to drop on when we're going to experience a Las Vegas type of critical incident where there's a mass shooting. Enough is enough is enough. We need to have legitimate gun control enacted in this state. We need to provide funding for mental health in this state. We need to not be partisan on this and start protecting our citizens. We are all joined in on this issue. We need to do better at what we've done. With that, I'll be quiet. I'll turn it over to my friend and neighbor to the south, Mayor Sylvester Turner. Good afternoon or good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mayor Ross and Mayor Nirenberg and all of the other mayors on this call. And look, I'm honored to be with you. And when I started in the legislature some 27 years ago, well, I was in there for 27 years. Mayor Parker was only 1 year old. So, so Mayor Parker, it's good to be with all of you, and Happy New Year to everybody. Look, serving in the legislature, I can tell you the most important thing for legislators in any session is passing a budget. And this year, the legislature has an unprecedented amount, over $33 billion to spend. That's, let me tell you, that's quite a bit. And I want to thank Mayor Ross for taking my comments. I support the entire big city legislative agenda. Every single item is important. But I stand with this bipartisan group of mayors in our state, urging our legislators to make a transformative investment in mental health services. To me, this is a major item. With a historic amount of funding, it's an opportunity to be transformative in making investments in mental health. Such an investment should be reflective of the increasing need for access to services. While there has been meaningful progress over the last few sessions, and there has been, and I give the legislature credit for that, I believe the state must invest hundreds of millions in increasing access this session or it is very unlikely to happen anytime soon. Despite the good and meaningful progress, I do note that Texas still ranks 50th in terms of access to mental health services, according to Mental Health America. So 50 states, Texas is still at the back end. I want to applaud Speaker Phelan for his commitment to offer 12 months of Medicaid coverage for new mothers. Representative Tony Rose, the only mental health professional serving in the Texas legislature, has offered this legislation that leads to last year's increased coverage. But we all agree we must go further to make an impact on our maternal mortality crisis. And you will have the full support for making this smart investment that affects over half the births in the state of Texas. As mayors, we know too well when people are not able to access these services, it often falls to the police to be the safety net. That's just unacceptable. We ask too much of our police, and frankly, they are some of the biggest advocates for increased mental health funding. And if I can underscore the need, it's for our children as well as for our adults, because there are many children that are in need of mental health services. There are many adults. There are people on our streets who are in need of mental health services. And then if we say that it's tied to crime and shootings, then there's no better time to address it than in this legislative session. So again, I am urging the legislators to invest in mental health services and access in a transformative way, especially community-based care, allowing our police officers to focus on what they do best, and that's solving crimes. And with that, let me now yield to Mayor Ginger Nelson, the mayor of the great city of Amarillo.
Thank you, Mayor Turner. And I couldn't agree any more with your comments, especially about mental health and the extension of prenatal care and maternal care. We absolutely call on the legislature to expand that. That's our kids. And I couldn't agree with you anymore on that. I want to focus especially on economic development from Amarillo's point of view. Amarillo is experiencing, the Texas miracle, as everyone in the state of Texas is. We're the prettiest state at the dance. We're the prettiest girl at the economic dance, and people want to do business in the state of Texas. And as city leaders, we recognize that we have to present the package that recruits them to come to our great state and do business. And we need to have competitive tools in order to do that, because we are competing against other states, cities located in other states that have these incentive tools. And so we're asking the legislature to support what we've been doing in economic development across the state of Texas. Cities are the building blocks of the Texas economy. And in Amarillo, we're building well. We're bringing in over 4,000 new jobs in the next 2 years, connected to several different manufacturing projects, including one that will assist the nation in building its own computer chips, so that we will not have the domestic supply issues with regard to computer chips that we have had in the last few years. So Amarillo will be opening soon the only rare earth mineral refinery in the nation, and that will add to being able to supply the components needed to make those computer chips. So economic development is very important to the cities of Texas, and we've got to have tools like 380 and 381 agreements in order to be competitive with other cities and other states. On an economic development topic, workforce development is vital to recruiting those businesses to come to our cities. And so economic development and workforce development go hand in hand. And I would say that broadband expansion of broadband services and broadband access are all, it's tied very well into workforce development. And we've seen that in Amarillo. So from Amarillo to Brownsville, I know Mayor Mendez has done a lot of work on that, as well as other cities represented on this panel. it is so important, whether that is an urban setting or a rural setting like Brownsville and Amarillo. We have to have the support of our government as they recognize that broadband is a basic right these days. It's like food, water, police protection. You have to have broadband access in order to succeed in life. Whether you are a fifth grader or whether you are a small business owner, you must have access. And we need the infrastructure in place to provide that access so that everyone in our cities and everyone in our state can have the opportunity to succeed. I second what other mayors have said about local control and mental health issues. Now is the time. Now is the time for us to invest in mental health, and agree with what Mayor Turner said should be a transformational investment in the lives of Texans this session for mental health. And agree also with what Mayor Nierenberg and Mayor Ross said about local control, because we do know best what our citizens need, and it's not a cookie cutter approach. Texas is a large state, and Mayor Mendez and I don't know how far, Mayor, 1,200 miles between our cities. And our cities have very different needs, and our citizens have very different wants. And so what we need we need the ability to address those things with local control, not having Austin dictate with one solution that meets the needs of every Texan. And I would pass the microphone, I think now, Mayor Munns, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Nelson. My name's John Munns. I'm the mayor of the city of Plano. It is a great honor to be a part of the Big City Mayors Coalition and to work together on areas of need throughout the entire state of Texas. This complete agenda that we're proposing is important to all of us. And like some of the mayors have said already, these are areas that are vitally important to all of the cities that are here today. A couple of items that have already been mentioned, but are also very important to the city of Plano, is the workforce and education. We talk about education a lot, and it is important that the state fully adequately fund education from early childhood development all the way to higher education. These are areas that we're going to need an educated workforce if we continue to prosper in the state of Texas like we have been. And again, like Mayor Nelson said, economic development is critical to all of us in being able to have those incentives available to every city. And those incentives always include companies that want an educated workforce. If we don't have those, I guarantee you those companies will move somewhere else. And so it's really critical that we have that education in place for all of Texas to have those opportunities that are so important to keep that workforce right here in Texas. I am now going to turn it over to the great Mayor Ron Jensen of Grand Prairie, Texas.
Thank you, Mayor. As Mayor Munns said, I'm Ron Jensen, City of Grand Prairie. Look, getting 18 mayors to agree on anything is an easy task. We wouldn't be able to agree on where to go for breakfast this morning, I guarantee you. These are important issues. The 18 mayors represented here represent a third of the entire population of the state of Texas. 1/3. This are all important to all of us. Things get real political down in Austin. These items, though, should be nonpartisan. Now, I've many times said that they throw an issue on the table down there. The rights get on the one side, the lefts get on the other side, and then they figure out why they're on the other side. But I hope they can come together on these issues. I'd like to underscore two things that a number of other mayors have said. Because of the demographics in our city, broadband is important in early childhood education. Many of the other mayors have mentioned that is extremely important in our city, and I wholly support these agenda items along with my other mayors. And so thank you for this opportunity. And with that, I'll pass it on to Trey Mendez, mayor down in Brownsville.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen, and good morning, everyone. I join you from the city of Brownsville, Texas, which is the southernmost city in Texas and the southernmost city in the United States. We're here on the border by the sea, and we're also the second most historic city in Texas and home to SpaceX, which we're looking forward to having an orbital launch of a Starship here in the next couple of months. Looking forward to that. And Brownsville, really, although we are one of the largest cities in Texas, 18th largest city in Texas, we still have a very small town mentality, and we are historically, and we have been, one of the poorest communities in the United States. But for us, it is important. We are fast growing. We've been able to grow our economy significantly over the last several years. So it's important for us to continue to be able to do that. And for us, like other mayors here, local governance is extremely important. We learned that during COVID. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. The city of Brownsville struggled with some of the decisions that were being made and the inability for us to make our own decisions during COVID. We are a community that is 70% chronic illness. Because of that, we needed to take some bigger measures that we weren't allowed to do. So local control is really important for us. Like I said, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. For us, economic development is extremely important. Like I said, we are a fast-growing city. We have been hampered somewhat by the cap in tax revenues here that was approved a couple sessions ago. But also, we feel that it's important to have incentives to be able to continue to incentivize industry and growth in our cities here in Texas is crucial. One place I think is critically important, not just for Brownsville, but other cities in Texas, is the space industry. Texas has been a historic leader in space. However, we're losing some of that market share to other states. Alabama, Florida, California, and others want a piece of the pie. And it's up to us whether or not we want to retain our share in that, in the fast growing space industry, which figures to be $1 trillion industry here in not too long. And lastly, for us, we are poster child for the digital divide. Brownsville, Texas, like I said, one of the poorest communities in the United States. We're crossing our name off that list here pretty soon, but it is important for us to have access to broadband, to have access to internet. So just a couple of years ago, as one of the least connected communities in the United States, we partnered with a third party to provide broadband access here in Brownsville. And it's important for us to continue to have options for other cities across the state to continue to have options to solve digital divide in their community in their own unique way. For us, it was partnering with a third party. Incumbent providers did not want to invest in Brownsville. It wasn't a business model for them. That's the case for a lot of other cities in Texas. Some are fortunate enough to where investments are made. Others like us, those investments aren't being made. When they're not being made, the digital divide grows bigger. So we have to have the ability, and other cities in the state have to have the ability to make innovative solutions and to come up with innovative solutions that's best for their community to eliminate that digital divide, which will then allow other options for their citizens, allow them to grow economically, allow students to get online, and allow businesses to grow. So with that, I will pass it to Mayor Fuller from the city of McKinney. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe most of our legislative priorities have been well covered by my colleagues, and I certainly echo the comments that have been made by every mayor today. We are no different here in the city of McKinney. So I'll end with a little bit of broader message. We're all blessed to serve in this great state. We claim the Texas miracle, as was already mentioned today, and it's undoubtedly just that, right? It's a miracle. We weather economic downturns greater than any other state in the union. We claim the 9th largest economy in the world, and none of that's by chance. It's our intellectual capital, leadership at every level that's responsible. However, the last legislative sessions, we've seen a degradation in partnership and working relationship between the state and cities. We've seen nothing short of an assault on local control, and continued, certainly doesn't advance us. It diminishes our collective efforts, and we need to right that ship. We at the local level are your partners at the state. We are boots on the ground and in day-to-day communication with our shared constituents. has been said several times. We all have very unique situations in our cities. Some of us are very fast growing. Some of us are established at the end of our growth stages. We need that flexibility at a local level to make decisions. We got to find better communication, respect for one another to continue to advance the Texas miracle. At the local level, we practice nothing but purpose-driven decision-making. There's no room for partisan congestion in what we do and the decisions we make. And I'll just end by saying that, or asking that our legislators dismiss the Washington example that has been so prevalent of recent years and rather work in a bipartisan manner to advance policies that will move Texas forward. That is the charge that we all have, to move our communities, our cities, and the state forward. And working together is obviously the most constructive and productive way to do that. So I urge our legislators to do that, lead in that example. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Ron.
Thank you very much, Mayor Fuller, and to all of our mayors. Again, we are a group of Texans united for common cause, and that is to advance the success of our cities and the residents in all of our communities of Texas, representing, again, roughly 9 million of us across the spectrum of politics. So we get it done in a bipartisan way, and we look forward to a collaboration with the legislature in the same manner. So with some time left, we've got a few moments for questions. I'm going to turn it over to Bruce Davidson to help facilitate a bit of Q&A.
Hi, thank you to the media for joining us today. If you would like to submit a question, please do so through the Q&A function. We ask that you provide us with your name and affiliation and identify a specific mayor you would like to ask a question to, if that's the case. And we'll start with a question from Eleanor Dearman of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. A question for North Texas mayors. Are there any specific issues North Texas mayors are collaborating with each other on when it comes to the needs from the legislature for this region?
I can take the beginning of that. I would say most of the issues mentioned today really are universal across the state, especially in urban Texas. We're really fortunate in North Texas to have really close working relationships with one another. So I would say to Eleanor, to be continued during this session, as issues may pop up that maybe are specific to North Texas. It's very easy for us to pick up the phone and say, Mayor Fuller, how can I help you? That issue seems specific to your city, or to Mayor Ross. And so we'll just stay in close contact. And lastly, try to learn from some of our other mayors who have been through different sessions before and know as things pop up that may be most important to our large urban growing areas in Texas.
Well said.
I ditto what Mayor Parker has to say. There's every municipality, every county has a contingency of people that work on those particular issues, but then we have regional efforts such as our Regional Transportation Council that works collectively together as well down in Austin on some of the more regional broad-based issues going on. So there is significant collaboration throughout North Texas that we all stay in touch with.
And I think to Mayor Ross's point, no one's really talked about that, not because it's not a priority, but mobility and transportation infrastructure continues to be a top priority for each of us in this state. And that's not just large highway infrastructure. That's what does the future of public transportation look like? How are you making sure you're doing redevelopment work within your inner city core? And so that will be a topic that each of us will participate in, especially on behalf of each region. As Mayor Ross said, that's North Central Texas Council of Governments for us and our MPO, but each of us have an MPO we participate with that'll lead the charge for mobility and transportation infrastructure.
Our next question is from Kelly Marsalis of Plano. Are there specific legislative actions that you believe will impact child care and early childhood education costs across the board, while also supporting facilities in hiring and retaining quality teachers?
Well, I'll go ahead and take that since it's from Plano. But just like I said, to fully fund education and starting at early child development and all the way up is critical. And unfortunately, that percentage of funding from the state has diminished over the last couple of decades. And this is critical that we have fully funded education throughout the state of Texas. And this affects all the mayors here on this broadcast, but throughout all of the state. With that funding, we're able to create, or the ISDs are able to create those opportunities and to really have that teacher workforce much more available than it is today.
I may also add, and this may be provocative, but I want Texas to be known as a state that takes care of Texas families, women and children in particular, first. What if we piloted the very first paid family leave program in the state of Texas? That could look like a variety of different things run through the Texas Workforce Commission. But the reality is over 1/3 of Texas mothers especially do not have access to paid family leave and are back at work at 2 weeks. I know the other mama on this call could tell you 2 weeks after giving birth is just not possible. And so that's one thing in particular. And I already mentioned the other to the question about a real mixed delivery model that importantly works for our ISDs and also our community-based care. There's ability to draw down additional Head Start dollars to the state of Texas to these programs to enhance quality, especially for low-income families. And you'll see a variety of advocates, not just elected officials, but area nonprofits and community providers across our state, working with legislators across Texas this session.
Our next question is for Mayor Turner from Charles Blaine of Urban Reform. The agenda has one mention of property taxes, but nothing else in terms of affordability, a driver of the Texas miracle. Will this group be supporting anything like appraisal reform or housing policy reforms that ease development regulations for more and faster development?
I can't speak to whether or not the big city mayors are going to take position on capping appraisals. I will speak just personally as the mayor of the city of Houston. We have had those conversations. But even in my time in the legislature, that is one issue that the legislature has never touched in terms of appraisals. They have not capped appraisals. That issue has come up time and time again, and we'll see what happens in this legislative session. What I can say on property tax reduction, and certainly we support property tax relief, for a long time when it came to providing funding or financing for, let's say, public education, the state paid for, provided funding for 60%, and the local level there was 40%. In recent years, it has been the reverse. There has been cost shifting. And so the state now only assumes about 39%, and the local level is now assuming 61%. And when you look at your tax bill, it's not the taxes from the cities where the people are paying more. It's quite frankly, it's the property taxes for education, for schools. So I would say that the state needs to rightfully assume its position that it had years ago and assume, let's say, 6% of the cost and lower that burden on the local level back to 40%, if not lower. And with the funding, with the monies that they have now, they certainly can take a major step. Quite frankly, it needs to happen. So all of us support property tax relief, and then we will see whether or not the legislature will do anything to cap appraisals. They have not done so in the past.
Our final question is from Troy Kless with KINS 5 for Mayor Nierenberg. Do you support a possible increase in the age to buy assault weapons? What other gun control measures do you think would be realistic to reduce violence given what's happened in Uvalde?
I do. And let me first say there is a bit of, I appreciate the comments from Speaker Phelan upon his swearing in that opened the door for some responsible conversations at the legislature on these issues. I do agree with the positions that the BCM mayors outlined in a letter this summer after the just tragedy at Uvalde, increasing the age to purchase an assault weapon, universal background checks for all gun purchases, finally passing a red flag law for which the federal legislation is supported. Those are things that are common sense and should be done. And I want to emphasize our position on this is really about keeping dangerous weapons out of the hands of dangerous people. That's it. And so anything that we can do along those lines, I would support. And again, I would refer to the letter that the coalition sent to our state leaders earlier this summer.
That was our final question.
Thanks, everybody. And to the mayors, look forward to working with you all throughout the year. God bless Texas.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Take care.
Yeah, take care.
Record.